Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl Cat Daddy.
And Jazz, the 40 ounce connoisseur.
And we are back with another Dread Talks. And of course, it's Black History Month. It's Black 366, and y'all already know this. But we are here to not only highlight some wonderful Black creators, but this go around, we're talking about Mark Harris. And he's here to join us today. And we're going to ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind, Mr. Harris. But before we ask you questions, tell the folks who you are, where can they find you, a little bit about who you are and your work.
I'm Mark H. Harris. I always use the H because there's another movie reviewer who's much more famous than me who's named Mark Harris, and I always get confused from him. So make sure to include the H in there. Um, I have operated the website blackhorrormovies.com since about 2005 or so. I recently co-wrote the book The Black Guy Dies First with Robin Means Coleman. It's been out for about a year now, so hopefully you've had a chance to read it. And I just, have kind of always enjoyed documenting the black presence in horror. I'm a horror fan for life, and I've always kind of paid attention to how black people fare. And I figured, if anyone else, if no one else is documenting what's going on there, I may as well take a stab at it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years or so. So
Yes, super cool. So, just to piggyback off of that, we'd like to ask you, like, what was the origin story of that? In 2005, you're like, yeah, what made you say, I'm starting this website today?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm a lifelong horror fan. I've always enjoyed horror movies, and I've also, on the other side, also paid attention to black roles in movies and TV because I remember I'm a child of the '80s, and it was so rare back then to see a black face. So that I remember as a kid, every time I would see a black face on TV, I'd be like running around the house like, "There's a black person on TV! There's a black person on TV!" And so we'd like tune into that. So I really was hyper aware of that sort of representation. And so at some point, I guess in 2005, I just was just like surfing the net and was just like, what is there on online about black people in horror movies? Because it's like I know there isn't the track record isn't great, but I thought maybe there's somebody must be documenting this somewhere. And I looked around and I couldn't find anything, so I was just like I said, if no one else is doing it, I may as well start doing it. And I know that I've seen quite a few horror movies, and I felt like I had a good grasp of what the typical portrayals are and the typical tropes and that sort of thing. So I just started writing about it. I love writing, so just something I started documenting and paying way too much attention to over the years, and just kind of writing down my thoughts on certain movies and my thoughts on certain traits and tropes and certain trends that I've noticed over the years, and just it kind of has taken off from there.
Excellent.
Shout out to you and your work because
Yes.
honestly, when we during the height of the pandemic, I was okay. Look, see,
Thanks a lot.
during the height of the pandemic, we spent a lot of time in the house. You're welcome. But shout out to you and your website and your work. Like a lot of things that we didn't know and information we didn't know about, like we were able to discover stuff and read up on things and gain more knowledge. So we're just so honored to just share space with you right now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Talking a little bit about your book, I want to say I'm sure you get this all the time, but I love. It's hard for me to really like comedy in books, and some of like the way that you and Dr. Coleman have wrote stuff. I literally found myself just giggling out loud at the book. So, what chapter would you say was the most fun to write in the Black Guy's Eye First?
Um, I'd probably say the one where we kind of go through all the different tropes and the different types of characters that really tend to populate movies. So that's something that I explored a little bit on my site first, and I kind of expanded in the book. Just kind of going through all the little buckets that Hollywood puts black characters in these movies, like the sidekick, the authority figure, the magical Negro, the voodoo practitioner, all these different roles. We kind of narrowed it down to about 10 or so roles that pretty much 99% of the roles land in those buckets. And so that was kind of the approach we had to the book in general. We wanted to make it accessible, not quite so academic, not as academic as Horror Noir, Robin's other book. So we kind of wanted to have a sense of humor to draw people in, maybe draw in people who wouldn't necessarily be interested in this topic to begin with, but kind of draw them in with the humor, make it entertaining first, and then maybe kind of, drop some knowledge on them after the fact.
Listen, you definitely dropped some knowledge, and the format. Because I was about to ask next, like, what made you guys decide to, go with the pictures? Because that again, that made I went through that book in like 48 hours because I was like, ooh, because you're thinking of a lot of times when people write books like these where it's educational, but it's just walls of text, walls of text, walls, and here's some text, then the subtitles, the colors, and all the graphs, and then all the jokes in between. Like, if they die like this, you get this. I was like, okay. So I really love that it's accessible to everybody because sometimes people tend to hide the information behind inaccessible language or you make it unappealing, but no, it was so fun to read. It was
Thank you,
just
thank you.
cool.
Yeah, we really looked at it like a sister doc to uh, horror noir, because the horror noir is kind of the more academic side, and this is kind of more accessible. And that's kind of how the book came about too. It's just that the publisher approached Robin with the idea they had seen the horror noir, the documentary, and they approached her with a idea to follow up her book with another book, but to make it something more a little accessible to the mainstream public. So she brought me in to kind of spice up some of the humor and to kind of put some more content in there because she doesn't have as much time to watch movies as I do. So she's not quite as up on all the recent stuff. So I kind of helped with all that. And so yeah, it was a blast. It was like my dream project, really, to be honest. Yeah.
Cool. I did want to ask, since we're talking about reading and access, I read one of your early interviews from last year, and you talked about how went to the public library and rented Night of the Living Dead on VHS. How, like, can you like talk more about maybe how the public library played a role in your access to horror and media and fantasy, if it played a large role?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, that was one of my first memories of a horror movie that really connected with me was watching Night of the Living Dead rented from the library on VHS when I was probably 12 or so. Where I grew up and the time I grew up, we didn't have cable. I mean, cable was kind of coming into existence, but I grew up in the country in Virginia, and we didn't have any access to any sort of cable. We had like three channels and PBS, and that was it. So the library played a big part in stuff that, beyond, books and also movies. And so I would go there and just get stacks of stuff, books and movies, and just, watch all kinds of stuff. And luckily my parents weren't too observant about what I was watching. So, so I got a fair amount of horror movies in there that I watched. And I was able to watch some of the old stuff like Night of the Living Dead, and it was really great. I mean, it was something that you can't really beat it. And even today, honestly, I still get a lot of stuff from the library because you can get not necessarily in person, but at least where I am in LA, they give you access to a couple of streaming sites, Canopy and Hoopla, and you can get a
Yes.
ton of free stuff just streaming from that, like IFC, Shutter stuff. You can get A24 stuff, all the kinds of stuff. So it's great.
No, we're here. Jazz put me on the canopy, and I was like, "Yes, this is the time."
Yeah.
It makes me really
Hmm.
sad about what's happening with, our country and libraries and just public access. But that's a conversation for another day. Um, we noticed that your love for Blackula, and we wanted to know first why Blackula, and also are there any other black exploitation horror films that you'd like to shout out or recommend? We know the era was, it was a time and it was a time. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I connected with Blackula. I mean, I think when I watched it, I was expecting something really cheesy because you hear the name Blackula and you're just like, okay, this is some corny little movie and stuff. And I remember watching it and being surprised at like how actually good of a movie it was. I mean, it was really effective. It had some really, for the time at least, really effective scares. They had the one scare that this kind of one of the most famous scenes in it, I guess, is this slow motion scene in the morgue where one of the female vampires rises up and she, starts to going running in slow motion and then attacking this morgue attendant or whatever, and it's I mean, even to this day I think it's pretty effective, and so it was really something that really struck a chord with me from both a horror aspect and from a message point of view. It had like a lot of social talk commentary on police abuse and racism and that sort of thing. So it was really interesting to me that this movie that I think most people who haven't seen it just kind of dismiss as some kind of corny black exploitation movie. It really has some depth and some quality to it. So I've really always had a soft space in my heart for it. As for other black exploitation movies from that time, I think I think on the other side of the spectrum of Blackula is another vampire movie, Ganja and Hess, which has become a really had a resurgence of late. People are discovering it now, but it's kind of it's a vampire movie, but it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, in that it's very artsy and very cerebral, and very dense. I guess it's hard to. I didn't. I remember watching the first time, and I was just like, "What is this?" And I just had to rewatch it several times before it really kind of sunk in. And I still, I'm still not 100% sure about everything that is in it in terms of the symbolism and that sort of thing. But it's very, very much worth a watch, I think, for anyone who's interested in 70s cinema. And I'll also recommend one more that Robin always mentions since she's not here. There's one called Welcome Home, Brother Charles. And it is it's semi-horror, but it's about a guy who is framed by the police, by racist police, and put in jail. And then he somehow, I forget how he does it, but he has some sort of voodoo ceremony in jail where he figures out how to elongate his penis to like several feet long, and then he gets out of jail and he proceeds to strangle all the people who set him up with his long penis. So that is worth a watch. I don't know if it's a great movie, but just from the description alone, it's something that I would recommend everybody watch at least once, just to see like this thing wrapped around people's necks. So yeah, Welcome Home, Brother Charles. Robin's recommendation, definitely.
Oh no, I've never seen that, so I'm definitely gonna check that out. But just based on the description, is
Yeah.
I need to see that with my own eyes now. Another question. I know that you just mentioned like black exploitation and '70s movies. Are there any newer movies that that really hit you? Because as horror fans, if we've been watching movies for decades and decades, you get a little desensitized to certain
Mhm.
things. It's like, oh, okay, entrails. Yeah, we've seen that. So, are there newer movies that gave you a little fright or had you thinking late at night, like 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I still find a lot of movies every year that I love. I think we're in kind of a golden age as far as horror goes. I think there's a lot of great stuff coming out every year. Not necessarily always from the major studios, but you can always find something from the independents and from international releases and stuff to really strike you. I think my favorite movie from last year was probably Evil Dead Rise. I think really struck a chord with me. Um, I don't know. I don't know what about it exactly. It's just really just a visceral, like you know, bare bones kind of movie, and it was just they really just they got the essence of the of Evil Dead to me, and they just kind of went for it, and just action packed, and just the lead actress, the one who plays the mother, I think. I know horror movies don't get Oscar recommendations or Oscar consideration or everything, but I think whatever the Oscar version of for horror it should be is she should have been considered for that, because I think just her performance was just crazy. It cracked me up. I don't know if it was intended to be funny, but it was hilarious to me. Her delivery of her lines and stuff. So that's something that really struck with me. But as far as like black horror specifically, also I enjoyed Talk to Me last year. I enjoyed there's another one that's kind of divisive, but I enjoyed it. It was called The Strays. It's on Netflix. It's a British horror movie, and I didn't know what to think about it the first time I watched it, so I watched it again, and just it's just the kind of movie that I enjoy in terms of it kind of pushes the boundaries of black horror. I think is the kind of thing we need to kind of expand beyond, everybody trying to be, the next Jordan Peele or something like that. It kind of was really interesting portrayals of characters you don't always see in this light, and so it's about like this woman, light skinned black woman who kind of abandons her life in this the lower class environment and kind of somehow reinvents herself and marries a white man. She abandons her black kids and she marries this white man and reinvents her life as I guess she isn't passing necessarily as white, but she's just kind of living this high upper middle class life. And the black kids kind of over the years they've grown up and they track her down, and they have some issues with her. So so it's really just interesting. It's an interesting social dynamic. I think it's the kind of thing that fascinates me. I'm kind of like I think I'm low key have some sort of social anxiety disorder because I always find these movies fascinating that explore kind of social dynamics and how people relate to each other and kind of the evils within man and how they treat each other and that sort of thing. So I thought that was really an interesting movie that really struck with me, and yeah, so yeah, I think there's just a lot of, like I said, every year there's a ton. Like I've started to do a kind of a top 20 list for my site of top 20 black horror movies each year, which would be inconceivable in previous years. Like there would barely be 20 black horror movies at all, much less 20 good ones. So it's really, like I said, we're in really a golden age for not only black horror but horror in general.
Definitely, definitely.
We definitely agree. Okay, we're gonna switch gears just a smidget, and we're gonna play a quick little game of Would You Rather. Really fun, super safe questions. Nothing
Okay.
bad. You'll get in trouble. Okay.
All right.
So
So
our first
my
question.
wife's here now, so be careful.
Safety first. Safety first. Okay.
Okay.
Would you rather be a servant of Jimmy Bones or a Cenobite?
Oh man, I think I'd have to go with Jimmy Bones. I mean, he seems like he at least has some good with him. I mean, the Cenobite that kind of role it doesn't seem like it has a good ending for anybody. I think eventually you end up in hell at some point. I mean, you just gotta. I mean, I don't know. Jimmy Bones seems like you could sort of convince him to do something better, or some sort of good 401k or some sort of benefits that the Cenobites don't have. So I'd stick with Jimmy.
Okay, okay. All right.
Good
Okay,
choice.
I got one. I got one. Would you rather spend a week in the Marston house from Salem's Lot or spend a week in the house from Amityville?
Um, I'm trying to think. It's been a while since I saw Salem's Lot, so I'm not really sure what that entails exactly. Amityville, I don't know. I like the movie
Salem's.
Amityville Horror, but I think
Okay.
spending time there, although it's on the lake, it's got a nice view. I might have to, if the house isn't any good, you can just go get a boat, hang out in the water for a while. I think I'll go with the Amityville. How about that?
Okay. Okay, because Salem's Lot, there might be some people interested in drinking your blood there, so you gotta be a little careful. Gotta be a little careful
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Salem's Lot, aka Jerusalem's Lot.
yeah. That's not hygienic at all. Yeah, I can't do that.
Okay, last question. Would you rather visit the further or be stuck in the Twilight Zone for a day?
I think I'll take the Twilight Zone because the Twilight Zone isn't always bad, is it? I mean, I feel like there are some episodes where I don't know, it wasn't. I don't know, I'm testing my memory now, but I feel like it's not always at least scary. It might be a little, have an ironic fate, but maybe you survive and you can, you know, something not so bad might happen. I'll stick with the Twilight Zone. How about that?
Good choice.
All right. All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping it up. Yes. Thank you so much for spending time and sharing space with us. We were honored to even talk to you because y'all read The Black Guy Dies First twice. I'm looking at people in the eyes because they're going to see this and they better buy the book, read it twice. Also go to blackhorror.com. Okay. Yes. Go to blackhorrormovies.com and click all the links. Open all the links, all the articles, click them and read them for
You don't have to read.
understanding. Okay.
That's not, yeah,
I think
no.
they should read them, but at least give him the click. Okay. But yes,
Make sure they
guys.
see that.
Yeah, at minimum. And guys, please keep looking at our calendar. Look at Dread Central's page. Look at Girl That's Scary. We are going to be dropping all kinds of events for trivia, like screenings we're going to be doing, and we're going to have panels and all kinds of things on the internet. So please keep your eyes open. So as we continue, celebrating Black History Month, Black 365, 366. It's a leap year. Okay. And thank you so much, Mr. Mark H. Harris. Put that H in there, guys, for sharing this time with us.
Thank you. Appreciate
But
it.
but until next time, y'all. Bye.